Bentley Continental GT first drive. And all at once, Wolfgang Rheimer's tenure as Bentley's governor makes even more sense. Rheimer, one of the best engineers and managers within the Volkswagen Group, was also, you might remember, Porsche's head of research and development when the Panamera was first launched, so he saw it through to a pretty successful completion. And now, here comes a Bentley, the Continental GT, which is based on the same architecture as the latest Porsche Panamera. I suspect that having somebody of Rheimer's influence around has been quite useful during this car's gestation. The latest Continental GT is, as before, a 2+2. And it's nearly ready. Nearly enough that this story could almost have appeared in this magazine's first drive section. But, 4 months from full production, there are still some things, software and trim finishing, rather than any hardware, which is all signed off, that still need changing, so here we are, in the features section, testing an almost ready Continental, Bentley's W12-powered £150k-ish luxury coupe. The architecture it's based on matters because it really defines how this latest Continental GT behaves, and Bentley would like it to behave with luxury first, and sportiness second. Therefore, Bentley's, Rheimer's, influence over Porsche's MSP platform, which underpins the Continental, shouldn't be underestimated. It wasn't a case of Bentley being given the hardware and told to get on with the job. It has exerted its own requirements into the platform, such as specifying changes to the suspension so that it can accept a larger wheel and tire size than any other MSP car, and, more important, designing certain structural elements so that they have better local stiffness. Local stiffness is, apparently, crucial in a luxury car, which is what the Bentley is, whereas overall body stiffness is more important in a sports car, which is what a Porsche is. Overall body stiffness lets the suspension and steering be as precise as you like it to be. But it amplifies sound, as you'll know if you've driven a stretch of concrete motorway in a car with a super rigid body structure. I said, as you'll know if. Oh, never mind. So, anyway, you want the body in white to reach only a particular stiffness, and after that, engineers on luxury cars are better served working on local stiffness. To ensure the suspension, there are 3 air springs at each corner here and 48 volts active anti-roll bars. Engine, transmission and so on can do their jobs properly. You want anything suspension and steering related as stiff as possible. But how rigidly you mount the engine is a particular conundrum. Too stiff and it upsets the natural refinement of the car. Too loose and it'll rock during cornering and direction changes, and it unsettles the car that way. Like having a 300 kilograms dragon loose under the bonnet or something. It helps the luxury thing, of course, if you put an engine that has a natural balance to it beneath the bonnet, such as one with 12 cylinders. I say that, mind, because it's true that cars with multiples of 6 inline cylinders have perfectly balanced primary and secondary moments, so they don't really vibrate. Bentley's W12. Newly developed for the Bentley and with more than 80 components changed again here, mostly because they don't need it to go off-road, isn't so inherently balanced but is incredibly compact because it's effectively arranged like 2 V6s around a common crankshaft. So it's very short and, coupled with the fact that the front axle line is pulled forwards over its predecessor by 135 mm, it gives a rather better weight distribution. Of 55-45 front to rear, rather than closer to 60-40 last time out. Bentley says it's the most advanced 12-cylinder on the planet. 6 cylinders shut down under light loads and it has 2 turbochargers, but it's the injection where it's cleverest. Old-fashioned port injection is apparently good for giving a car a relaxed, refined idle and low-rev mooching, whereas high loads and throttle openings suit these newfangled direct injection methods. So they've given the 6.0-liter W12 both. Finessing the map from one to the other is still on Bentley's to-do list. But even now, it generates 626 bhp at 6,000 revolutions per minute, which is not a monumental increase over the most powerful versions of the previous Continental GT, and 664 pounds-foot from 1,350 revolutions per minute. Which is it drives. And here is where the platform could reveal its less luxurious side, but we'll see. Through a ZF dual-clutch 8-speed gearbox rather than a torque converter unit, to which a W12 has so far always been mated. But what Porsche's influence takes with one hand, it gives with the other. The four-wheel drive system is far more rear-biased than before. Depending on the drive mode you're in, only up to 38% of power can ever go to the front, and if you're in sport, only 17% will get there. So not only is the Continental GT a little lighter than before, although, at 2,244 kilograms, these things are relative, and the weight is distributed more evenly, but most of the time it's also rear-wheel drive. Excellent. Ultimately, then, Bentley chassis engineers would like you to consider it a great car to drive, full stop, rather than a great car to drive, given its weight. Which still strikes me as a tall order. I mean, if you want massage seats and mirror-matched veneer, you are going to have to accept that the car weighs more than, say, an Aston Martin DB11, which, although the two cars are meant to do slightly different things, is probably the Bentley's closest benchmark. So let's see. Inside, the Continental GT has the DB11 fairly licked. Granted, if Aston decided it too wanted to do more grand and less touring, perhaps it would make its interior feel more like this, but the good things about the Continental's interior are, first and foremost, how beautifully put together from first-rate materials it feels, and, second, that there's precious little in here you could identify as coming from its parent manufacturer. There are a couple of bits of stitching that need tidying up as full production approaches, but you have to be looking for imperfections to find them. Really, though, it's all but there. It all adds weight, this kit, I don't wonder, but that's why it has a 6.0 W12, after all. The still sizable sprung mass presents its own advantages as well as disadvantages, mind. On the plus side, it means that the body is fairly well impervious to small lumps and bumps in the road. Simply, a given impact will push a lighter-weight body out of line more than it will a heavy one. And the new Continental GT, as we mooch out of the Crew HQ bound for North Wales and eventually Anglesey race circuit, shows it's pretty able here. The roads around the Crew factory are sufficiently shaky that Bentley has asked the local council not to resurface them, because it's a good ride test, and one the new GT meets with impressive cabin isolation. Conversely, though, when you do get a heavy body moving, it's harder to keep it pinned down. And if, like Bentley, you give your car a huge remit, to be part sports car with 200 miles per hour capability, yet all luxury car, you have to be a bit clever. The 48 volts anti-roll bar system that made its debut in the Bentga, then, is back, as is air springing with 3 chambers at each corner. In the car's normal drive mode, signified by a little B on the drive controller, and known as Bentley mode by the engineers, because it's their preferred setting, you're working with 2 air chambers. Flick the switch to sport and you lock out yet another air chamber. Flick it the other way, to comfort, and you open up all 3. In sport, the spring rate is pretty much double the comfort one. It's all rather effective, with adaptive dampers, plus the active anti-roll bar, which is loose in a straight line and firm